Julie and John Gottman, you are well renowned for your outstanding research and clinical experience in couple and marriage therapy. In your recently co-written 8 Dates book, you propose a weekly-based program in which partners could diffuse their disagreements and identify the things that keep them together. A weekly night date can be focused, as you say, on different subject matters, from money and trust to future plans and current conflicts. But probably the most difficult couple discussion would be on sex and intimacy. What could be done in order to get over the inhibitions and taboos which arise when partners are talking about sex?
I think one of the things that you can do is wait a while before you have that discussion. So talk a bit more about some of the other chapters in the book, like parenting, for example, like trust, maybe like fun and play. Those are a little bit easier to move into. And with talking about sex and intimacy, all of us have difficulty struggling with that subject and saying scary words like vagina and penis and breast. But all of us, most of us anyway, like to have sex. And so realizing that sexuality is something as natural as wanting to eat food, drink water, and understanding also that the more our partners know what we like, what we're feeling, what really appeals to us and maybe what doesn't, the better the passion and intimacy will be in your sexual life. So you will be deeply rewarded for talking about sex once you get over that first hurdle. And I think, it's like many other subjects that are difficult to talk about. Once you get past the door, walk in and really begin to talk about it, it gets easier and more comfortable with time.
Yeah, and I would add that, part of what you need to do is stay curious and build a kind of love map of your partner's erotic world. Really ask questions so you know what your partner wants, very much like what Julie was saying.
Okay. What kind of questions can be put? Because you are emphasizing of the importance of the open questions or of the art of questioning in this kind of discussions.
Well, we include a list of those questions in our book, 8 Dates. And some of the questions include things like, how would you like sex to be initiated? What would feel good to you about that? How can either one of us refuse to have sex without hurting the feelings of the other person? How can we do it in a way that's reassuring of our love, but at the same time saying, well, maybe not tonight? Other questions include, how do you like to be touched? Do you want to be touched with firmness or lightly? Where do you like to be touched the most? What parts of your body maybe are ticklish that would make you scream with laughter and hit the ceiling rather than feeling sexy? So there are questions just pertaining to the step-by-step processes of having a sexual relationship and how you like your sexuality to be expressed and received.
Sometimes it's helpful to have the questions in front of you and not have to come up with them on your own. And we've field tested all of these questions and all these dates with over 300 couples who recorded their dates. So we know that, these questions work.
Mm-hmm. I see. A night date could address intimacy issues, but it could be also a good opportunity to tackle conflictual matters discussed during the day, for instance. How could one avoid a new fight during the night date or discussion, considering that in the evening people are tired and perhaps they have already ruminated a lot on their conflictual opinions?
Well, first of all, I want to reassure the readers of this book that the chapter on conflict does not talk about having a conflict during your date night. What it's really talking about is what are the best ways to talk about any conflict when one comes up. Again, how should we bring up a conflict issue? How did our own parents or caretakers deal with conflict when we were growing up? And do we want that same pattern to exist in our relationship, or do we want to practice something very, very different? How should we handle things when we feel angry or frustrated? So, there are questions about how should we communicate when we want to bring up a complaint or a conflict issue and talk about it, as opposed to actually having the fight then and there on the date night. So what you're bringing up is a really good idea, which is don't do it at night when you're tired. Mm-hmm. Make a date to have a conflict discussion maybe at 11 o'clock in the morning after you've had your 3 cups of morning coffee. It might be better.
The idea of the dates is to keep curiosity alive in one another. So the dates are designed with questions that ask things like, when you were a child, did your parents fight? Did you watch them fight? And what's been your history with the emotion of anger? Have you experienced anger? What happens when you get angry? How should I respond when you're angry? How would you like me to respond? So questions like that just invite answers about conflict, so you can know best how to talk to somebody when there's disagreement.
I see. Love is an action, even more than a feeling, you say in your 8 Dates book, and that means we have to practice the attunement with the loved one. Could you elaborate on the meaning of attunement?
Yeah, it's very much like instruments in an orchestra that need to tune in with each other and resonate together in a way that is very pleasing. So attunement is really about listening to your partner when your partner is upset about anything, including you. So really asking questions and saying to your partner, honey, when you're upset, the world stops and I listen. And I have a notebook in my back pocket that I can pull out and always open and take notes about what Julie is feeling. And this notebook is right here, always accessible, and it contains notes at times, just listening to my wife rather than being defensive. So this attunement is about really sort of tuning in to your partner's emotions and trying to understand your partner's emotions with compassion and understanding rather than defensiveness.
Can I add a little to that? So in place of defensiveness, here's what we recommend to do attuned listening. First of all, you ask questions to understand at a deeper level your partner's feelings. Like you might ask, what's the most upsetting part about this for you? Or what's your worst fear here? Or, tell me, are there any other feelings that go along with your anxiety here? So you're asking questions first that are big open-ended questions. And by that, we mean questions that have a longer answer, not a question that is yes or no, but tell me more. Help me understand this better. And as you understand, you want to express empathy. And that's one of those words that you hear a lot, but people don't always know what it means. So what empathy means is guessing at what the partner is feeling and naming that feeling and adding words of validation. Words of validation means no wonder you're feeling that way. I really get it. That makes sense to me. So expressing empathy might sound like, gosh, you sound so angry. Is that right? I get it. I can understand why you'd be angry about that. I think that would make me angry too. That's empathy. So what you're trying to do is to let in a little bit of what your partner's feeling, enough to understand it yourself, to name it, and then to say, yep, that makes sense. I get it.
A durable, solid marriage is made up by little moments and gestures, as you say in your book. Could you give us some examples?
Yeah, they're very simple things. We found when couples, we studied 130 newlywed couples in an apartment laboratory that Julie and I designed. A lot of times one person would just try to get their partner's attention or interest or tell a joke or want some affection. They would make an attempt to connect with their partner. And what we looked at was, how does the partner respond? Does the partner completely ignore the attempt and keep doing what he or she is doing, which we call turning away? Or does the partner respond in some way, just acknowledging, or looking at the thing that the partner is saying, oh, that's interesting, look at that. Or do they get irritated and say, will you be quiet, I'm trying to read? How do they respond? And what we found was, in these very small moments, 6 years later, we looked at the couples who got divorced, these newlywed couples who were already divorced. And when we looked at how much did they turn toward these attempts to connect, the ones who divorced eventually were turning toward only 33% of the time. And the ones who were still married 6 years earlier were turning toward 86% of the time. So not 100%, but very big differences in just these small moments of tuning into your partner and what your partner needs and what your partner is asking for.
No. Mrs. and Mr. Gottman, thank you for your time and for your clear and useful advice you offer to the Romanian public. Thanks a lot.
You are so welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
We enjoyed it. Take good care.